We like to describe our report as a carefully edited collection of U.S. news headlines, papers across the country, summarized for you in one place. We do it here every day. Here's our top story. Yeah, maybe this says something about where my real interests lie, but I was compelled to read this entire story after I spotted it in the Washington Post this morning. I saw the headline. It says, "Ever wondered why milk can shoot out of a person's nose?" It's in the Kids Post section. The story says, "Every middle schooler has experienced it in the lunchroom. Somebody tells a joke while somebody else is drinking milk, and the person laughs so hard that milk comes out of their nose." The Post is complete with diagrams of the mouth, nose, and throat to explain how this happens. To the front page of this newspaper, a report from Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, where for the first time in 18 years, news photographers were permitted to attend a ceremony for the return of a body of an American service member. The elder President Bush put this ban on news coverage of the ceremonies in place in 1991. In Delaware, the News Journal covers the story on its front page with the headline, "Arrival of Fallen Troops at Dover No Longer Secret." President Obama at the top of the front page of the New York Times, speaking in Prague yesterday. He is tied into two stories about nuclear weapons leading the Times today. One story about the president's new approach to nuclear disarmament. The related, the concerns that bomb technology is increasingly available on the black market. And there's a story next to that about the independent tracking of the North Korean rocket launch. The North Koreans say they successfully launched a satellite. Missile experts say the launch appears to have actually been an embarrassing failure, with the rocket and payload dropping into the ocean. An Associated Press story getting a lot of ink this morning about the U.S. military's air-to-air refueling tankers. These airplanes are 50 years old, but the replacement program, as you may have heard, is tied up in politics. The story says the failure to replace the tankers show much of what's wrong with how the military manages its acquisitions. Medical news now from the New York Times. Scientists working with an experimental drug that may be able to help people erase memories from their brain. The idea is that they could make you forget a bad habit or a chronic fear. Do his and hers multivitamins make a difference? The Los Angeles Times asked that question this morning. Scientists are not sure that vitamin supplements help at all, but supposing they do, there's good reason to think gender-specific cocktails are a good idea, as men and women have different dietary needs. The pills may load you up on vitamins you don't need, though. One expert says many people who are taking iron, for example, don't need to. From the movie business, it was a surprisingly strong weekend for Fast and Furious, as reported in the LA Times. The latest installment in the movie franchise did $72 million worth of business. Universal says it identified the first week of April as a good time to launch an action movie. Apparently they were right. The Times also has a story about the success of 3D movies, particularly the 3D kids movie Monsters vs. Aliens. Audiences have been enjoying these latest 3D movies, but there is another huge benefit for the movie makers. 3D films are almost impossible to pirate. A lot of follow-up coverage in the papers this morning after the shooting spree in Binghamton, New York on Friday. The New York Post among the papers putting pressure on police to explain why officers decided not to go in initially to try to stop the gunman. They made a decision to wait 40 minutes for the SWAT team instead. The serial updated stories, including the horrible moments for Shirley DeLucia. She was the wounded receptionist who pretended to be dead and got out alive. A cancer-stricken Farrah Fawcett was fighting for her life on Sunday night, reports the New York Daily News. The paper says she has slipped into unconsciousness at a California hospital as relatives gathered at her bedside. The Boston Herald following Patriots quarterback Tom Brady to Costa Rica, where he was married, I guess again, to model Gisele Bundchen. A shot was reportedly fired by security people at two paparazzi. The security guys discovered the photographers and chased them when they refused to turn over their pictures. Country music superstars Rascal Flatts release a new album tomorrow. USA Today describes the band as country's unstoppable force. The album is called Unstoppable. Two more Michael Crichton novels are on the way. The New York Times has word from his publisher that Pirate Latitudes will be published on November 24th. Crichton was about a third of the way through another book at the time of his death. The publisher intends to have somebody finish that one. Also in the New York Times, a photo of me reading my newspapers at New York 1 in the morning. Times writer Brian Stelter interviewed me about patspapers.com. He correctly points out that this type of news summary is basically an acknowledgement that the day's news agenda still begins mostly with ink on newsprint. There's some worthwhile reading in the Wall Street Journal in a column from Tom Lauricella. This is about those target date retirement funds. These are supposed to be the set it and forget it option. You might have one of these in your 401k. It's a retirement fund matched to your approximate retirement date. Many of those funds dropped 25% with the recent market downturn. Lauricella is saying today that target date funds need to be fixed. Has the Republican Party found its rock star? Asked the Chicago Tribune this morning. The answer is maybe. 27-year-old Aaron Schock was picked by the Huffington Post as the hottest freshman in Congress. John McCain's daughter called him the future of the party. and he is 20 years younger than Barack Obama. Finally, from the New York Daily News, under the headline, Knockout Paunch, does the Rhodile Tummy Tuck serum actually work? A mother showed the results on the Rachel Ray Show. Sales of this product took off. The Daily News talks to some people who are giving it a try. Early response seems to be that the skin feels tighter, though a dermatologist interviewed here says it may feel that way for a while, but it's unlikely to have a permanent effect. We do this every day, and each morning we send out our email. It's a list of our favorite stories delivered straight to your email inbox. You can subscribe at patspapers.com. That's also where you'll find the links to all the stories I've talked about today.